How would we think and act in daily life if we were truly aware of our divine essence? Obviously, there wouldn't be room to reproach yourself because we wouldn't doubt our abilities. In fact, we'd never look in the mirror and feel anything but love and appreciation. We'd see ourselves as fully capable of attracting all we desire. We'd treat our body with reverence and care, giving thanks for its divine design. We'd celebrate every thought we have, knowing its divine origin, and we'd become aware of our enormous talents and be awed by all that we are. We need to encourage the awareness of our magnificence in every regard. When that awareness has been reawakened, the seedlings of inspiration will begin blossoming. Here's a way of expressing these fundamental truths offered by the writings of the Baha'i Faith. This most great, this fathomless and surging ocean is near, astonishingly near, unto you. Behold, it is closer to you than your life vein. Swift as the twinkling of an eye you can, if you but wish it, reach and partake of this imperishable favor, this God-given grace, this incorruptible gift, this most potent and unspeakably glorious bounty. There's no way to be in spirit without a changed awareness. So when we accomplish this, we give ourselves the gift of moving from being flawed, limited, lacking, and imperfect to being completely comfortable with our magnificence. This unspeakably glorious bounty is so close to us, all we have to do is make a few twinkling-of-an-eye adjustments. So why not begin right now? Here are 3 of the most obvious and important changes in awareness that you can make. 1. Changing the awareness of our magnificent talents and abilities. I want to emphasize an extremely important point. I'm not talking about self-esteem here, nor am I referring to levels of confidence. Rather, I'm saying that we need to keep the important question, who am I, in the forefront of our mind. This question doesn't revolve around previous life experiences, has nothing to do with what we've been told our special qualities or unique abilities are, and it isn't related to how worthy or worthless we feel about ourselves. It has to do with a simple truth. As Epictetus, a philosopher in the 1st century A.D., said, "You carry a God about within you, poor wretch, and know nothing of it." Just like Epictetus, who was born into slavery yet became one of our most profound teachers, we came into this world with an inexhaustible supply of talent. Our abilities are as limitless as God's are, because we're a distinct portion of the essence of Him. And there's an infallible way to begin entertaining those abilities and creating as He does. That way is to become aware that anything that excites us is a clue that we have the ability to pursue it. Anything that truly intrigues us is evidence of a divine, albeit latent, talent that's signaling our awareness. Having an interest in something is the clue to a thought that's connected to our calling. That thought is a vibration of energy in this vast universe. If something really appeals to us and we feel excited but perceive ourselves as devoid of the talent we think is necessary, it's probably an even higher vibration. Anything that's causing excitement within us is evidence of a spirit message that's saying, "You can do this. Yes, you can." If we react to this message with anything other than, "You're correct, I can do this, I have the ability to do it," then we've selected the vibration of resistance and ignored the vibration of excitement and interest that spoke to us. Our thoughts about who we are, what excites us, and what we feel called to be and do are all divinely inspired and come with whatever guidance and assistance we'll need to actualize these goals. The decision at this point is, are we willing to listen to these divine thoughts that pique our interest, or do we go on listening to the false self that's made us what Epictetus called a poor wretch? Rather than case studies of which I have only second-hand knowledge, I'm going to use some examples from my own life that illustrate listening to the false self. My background would appear to be an unlikely one for what I'm calling magnificence. Here's what it would look like on paper. Fathered by an alcoholic who abandoned his 3 children, childhood years spent in foster homes, a classic underachiever, educated in public schools, grew up at the low end of the socioeconomic scale, no financial advantages, no examples of or ambitions for higher education, 4 years as an enlisted man in the United States Navy, admitted to a university on a provisional acceptance at the age of 22 due to lower than average grades in high school, worked his way through 3 advanced degrees by being a cashier and a stock boy in a grocery store in Detroit. This isn't exactly what you'd call a prescription for becoming the best-selling author of 28 books and a successful public speaker. I couldn't begin to tell you how many teachers of creative writing and speech gave me low grades for my efforts in these fields. All I can say for certain is that I've always had a knowing about my interest in writing, have always been excited by the prospect of entertaining and informing an audience, any audience. By all of the accepted standards, I didn't have any writing ability. What I did have, and still do, was an interest and a passion for writing. It inspired and thrilled me, and I simply loved it. From the perspective of inspiration, I had the ability to do it, and that's all I needed to know. Then as now, I trusted that the universe would handle all of the details, including, will I be published? Will the critics approve? Will my book be a bestseller? Will my mother approve? Will I get an apology from any of my old English teachers? But really, who cares about any of this? The fact that writing excites me is all I've ever needed to know. When I follow that thought and stay with it, I conclude that I have the ability and the talent. And so do you. Like me, it's easy to find what excites you. What do you find intriguing? Does learning yoga and becoming an instructor interest you? Then you have your answer. The issue isn't about ability, it's about being matched up in spirit with your current thoughts and behaviors.
To change the thought from notice me, to what Lao Tzu calls living in obscurity, becoming more obscure. We live in a celebrity-obsessed world, don't we? Look at me. Notice me. The Tao teaches something completely the opposite. Listen to the 66th verse of the Tao. Water again. The sea stays low. And because the sea stays low, all of the rivers and all of the streams empty into it. Because it stays humble, because it stays in that place of just allowing everything to come to you. He was trying to teach us the important lesson of letting what we know is coming come to us. Verse 66 of the Tao. Why is the sea king of 100 streams? Because it lies below them. Humility gives it its power. That's a very important principle to understand, and I live on the ocean, right next to it. It's my front yard. And always I watch it to learn something from this thing called the ocean, which is the most powerful source of life that we have on the planet. Without it, there's no life on this planet. And because it stays low, so what does this have to say to us? Do you have the capacity to get past that ego need to always be saying, notice me, look how important I am? I mean, there's been a proliferation of this lately with this celebrity silly stuff, isn't it? I mean, CNN is doing, full hour shows on silly little things about what happened to this particular celebrity or what happened to that celebrity, and the celebrity's never even done anything. And there's all of this talk about it. And all of the new magazines. I mean, and you go through an airport and you look on the newsstand and all the same photos, just with different magazines. I don't even know what the names of all of them are, but there's like this huge market now that we have for people to get into a state of notice me, notice me, notice me. And how much do we train our young people, particularly in our schools and so on, that the one who is the star is the one who gets the most attention. The one who is the most important and the most valuable is the one that has the most people liking them and so on. This constant obsession with needing to be noticed. When in fact, what I have found for myself is the happiest moments of my life are when I can do it low and slow and not have anybody out there even know what I'm doing. To be able to, Louise never would have advertised the fact of some of the things I talk about with her generosity. She does it anonymously. It's almost always done in those ways. No, look at me, look and notice me, how important I am, and so on. So much to learn from that kind of wisdom, from that kind of inner connection to the Tao, the ability and the willingness to say, to do it anonymously, to say that you can just get done almost anything that you want to get done if you don't become obsessed with taking credit for it. In the 36th verse of the Tao Te Ching, it says, "The gentle outlast the strong. The obscure outlast the obvious." Try to become a little more obscure, a little less interfering, a little less notice me, a little less, one of the specific kinds of things that you can do is just as you're about, when somebody else is talking, just as you're about to interject what you've been thinking about for the whole time, waiting for them to stop talking, just stop and to bite your tongue and say, "Tell me more." Or, "That's very interesting. I have never heard that point of view before." Even if they totally, completely disagree with everything that you stand for, to be willing to listen, to be able to stop. Practice it. I practiced it when I did these verses of the Tao. I practiced it every single day while I was working on that. Just staying obscure. And for me, that's not always so easy because of just being recognized wherever I go. And if I saw someone who was about to recognize me, I would just put my head down. I would just walk a little bit past them like something. Right now, I just want to be anonymous. Right now, I want to be obscure. The Tao says, storms always end. Verse 23, fierce winds don't blow all morning. A downpour of rain doesn't last all day. Who does this? Heaven and earth. You're already connected to everything you want or need. It will come to you at the exact perfect time, as the rivers and the streams come to the ocean at the perfect time and place. You gotta trust. You gotta know it's going to come to you. You don't have to chase after it. You can become a little less obsessed with your ego and your self-importance and who you are and what you've done, and you can get so much more done. And you know what? It's the most peaceful and sweet, delicious way. It's like the song that Cecilia was singing about the rose. Thank you so much, and God bless you. Thank you. The softer you are, the less rigid you are, the more flexible you are as a person, the more you can accomplish. And this is a great way to practice in parenting as well. And this idea that a rigid thought, how many times have you heard this idea that if I tell you something, I'm going to stay consistent with it? We have a set of rules, these are the rules, and we'll do it this way. In the Tao it says the more rules you make, the more rule breakers you create. It's true. The more rules you have in your house about how everything has to go. We had in our house, my wife would have a big jar of M&Ms. Peanuts, all these different multicolored ones. And the kids in our house, because we didn't feed them sugar and we didn't give them sodas and stuff like that. So they were just more like a decoration. Every once in a while someone would take them. They'd hardly ever be replaced. Now when we had kids come over to our house who weren't ever allowed to have such horrible things, you should have seen their behavior. They would scoop them up, they'd be putting them in their pockets, and they'd get their purses, and they'd open it up, and, the whole thing would be empty. I said, what are you doing? He said, well, you mean you could just have these whenever you want them? I said, well, we don't really have any rules about that. It's just, it's not something that we encourage or discourage. It's just there. It's like Emerson had a wonderful line. He said, a foolish consistency is the hobgoblin of little minds. A foolish consistency, a rigid consistency. So that there are many people who will say, if I say it on Monday, you can be absolutely certain that on Wednesday, I'm going to believe the same thing, regardless of what might happen on Tuesday. Now, Tuesday might have something real that you might want to be changing your mind. You might want to say, I thought that this time, but now I've seen this, and now we can shift. And you can see how this can become and so much about the Tao is on leadership. Leadership in the family, leadership in the community, leadership geopolitically. Less rigidity, more openness, more willingness to listen and say, I changed my mind. Because a foolish consistency is the hobgoblin of little minds. And what I believed on Wednesday has changed because of what happened on Tuesday. Now, another important thing to say to your children, to your friends, to your lover, to your spouses, to whomever, to the people you work with, words that we're so terrified to say, but which give us a sense of living with the Tao. I don't know. I don't know. I'll look it up. Say it. I don't know. Doesn't hurt. Say it again. I don't know. Isn't it fearful? I mean, so many people, and it's like very freeing, because my kids ask me something, and I say, I don't know. They say, Dad, you know everything. You know everything. I say, well, I don't know that, and I'll look it up, or we'll try to find an answer to that, but I don't quite know. I know that even, I spent 20 years running, and I ran every day for 20 years, for 22 years, without missing a day, 8 miles. Never missed a day. That's rigid, all right? Some call that obsessive. But you brush your teeth every day, I used to say, and you don't call that obsessive. And you go to the bathroom every day, and you don't say, well, he's obsessively doing that again today. You don't do that. But anyway, what I learned is that even in the world of exercise, there are certain things that are built in to make us rigid, to make us stiff, to make us hard. And we lift, and we run, and we kick, and this is what we call working out. There's another kind of working out that is ancient. It goes back to the time of Lao Tzu and before, which is called yoga. And yoga means union. It means union with your source. And when you do yoga, you can stay in the same place. You can do the equivalent of 8 miles. When I used to run 8 miles, I had to run 4 miles that way, turn around, 4 miles back. And I'd be sweating. Now I can do yoga, and I can just stand in one place. And in 90 minutes, by being supple, by making myself stretch, by not being hard and rigid, I can get that out there. I can get that leg up. I can do these kinds of things. And 90 minutes later, it's like I'm totally sweating, and I feel so different. I used to, when I would go out at night to eat or something, after running so many miles, running marathons and doing those things, I'd go to get up, and it would be, okay, it's going to take a little while, because everything was so, that doesn't happen anymore, because I've given up hard. I've given up being rigid and substituted it for being supple, for being flexible, for living a life in which I don't have to always be so fierce. Listen to this verse of the Tao Te Ching. It's one of my all-time favorites, verse number 76. A man is born gentle and weak. At his death, he becomes hard and stiff. All things, including the grass and the trees, are soft and pliable in life, dry and brittle in death. Stiffness is thus a companion in death. Flexibility is a companion in life. And it's not just for how you exercise, it's how you think.
I think the most important thing that you can get out of this is to understand that you are a choice-making individual, and that all of the conditions that you find yourself in your life, all of the circumstances of your life, all of the emotional reactions that you have to all of the people and all of the things and events and so on that take place in your life are really choices. And that's a very difficult thing for a lot of people to get, because they're raised to believe that I can't help the way I feel. I have a right to be miserable when somebody treats me in a certain way. I can't help it. I've always been that way. It's just my nature. It's just the kind of person that I am.
This waiter was directly from Italy and was serving this wonderful pasta and all of these things. And he was a madman. He was a maniac. Every customer was getting him all upset. He would talk to the other head waiters and running back and forth and getting himself all worked up. Finally, I said, come on over here. Said, what are you doing this for? I do this all the time. You do therapy wherever you go, right? I said, what are you taking this so serious? All you're doing is serving spaghetti. It's no big deal. I said to him, before you're 50 years old, you're going to have a heart attack. Guarantee it, if you continue to behave that way every day. He said, look, what do you expect from me? I'm Italian. So, oh, well, that explains it. I mean, his rationale for his behavior was, I can't do anything about it, I inherited it. You know? I just got deficient anger genes. I mean, I've heard kids say that, you know, when they're failing math. I can't help it. My father was lousy at math, my grandfather was lousy. I inherited, you know, deficient math genes. It's just not my fault. I can't do anything about it. The fact is that anything that goes on inside of you that is immobilizing, that gets in your way, that keeps you from functioning in the ways that you would like to function, that stops you from reaching your goals, whatever they may be in your life, anything inside, you choose. It's yours. You own it all. And if you don't like anything about yourself, anything, are you shy? Are you nervous? Are you afraid? Are you somebody who can't handle getting up in front of groups because it scares you? Are you someone who gets angry too much? Do you find yourself being manipulated and controlled by other people too often? Are you afraid to stand up for what you believe? Are you a terrible cook? Are you lousy at tennis? You haven't got a backhand? Whatever it may be, it doesn't make any difference. You are the sum total of the choices that you make in your life. If you don't buy that, if you buy into another system, which a lot of psychologists will teach you, which is, it's in your unconscious. You can't help it. After all, you're a middle child. What do you expect from a middle child? You know, certainly can't have any identity of your own. Or maybe you're an only child. Oh, God. Maybe you're the youngest of 12. You had 11 parents, you know, all your life. Somebody telling you what to do from the time you, or maybe you were the oldest and you had to be a parent for 9 others, or whatever. You can use any excuse that you want, or you can just say, the devil made me do it, or it's God's fault. You know, a lot of people blame God. God and Mother are most responsible for all of the things that are wrong with us, you know. The classic, the one I heard over and over and over again in all the years, and I announced it on network television one night, you know. I said, I came here tonight for one reason. I want to tell everybody in America that your mother liked your sister better. I heard it every day for 20 years, you know, it must be true. I can't do it. My mother liked my sister better. No wonder I get it. She was the one that got all the attention. I didn't get anything. Her pictures and all the photographs. Nothing for me. I know some of you don't have a sister and you think, well, then that's not the reason. She wanted one. Really. And she would have liked her better. I guarantee it. You know. It's taking responsibility for everything that goes on in your life, which is what Wayne Dyer is about, if you really want to take it home to anybody else. No blame is allowed for anything that goes on in your life. Virtually everything in your life boils down to what kinds of attitudes, what kinds of beliefs do you have about any given situation. You try to set your expectations in such a way so that you understand that your life is nothing more than a series of choices.
Another new way of being for me is to think of yourself in terms of personal authority rather than being an authoritarian. Personal authority. A person who has authority never needs to dominate anyone else. Ever. Dominating doesn't become necessary. In business, you can have authority. The people who have the most authority are the ones who listen the most. And the ones who are the most conscientious about what do other people have to say. A person in a relationship who has to dominate somebody else and has to make the other person submissive shows that they don't have authority, because they're getting their power not from within for themselves, but on the basis of who they can control. And that never lasts. That never lasts. The only thing that lasts is having inner power, if you will. Know thyself. That's what Shakespeare said. Know thyself. The more you know yourself, the more you become honest with yourself, honesty becomes just a way of life. No, I don't think the world necessarily does, but you can't run your world. You can't run your world based upon what the rest of the people in the world want or don't want. To me, honesty is like, it's a karma that goes out into the world. How people treat you in the world is their karma. How you react is yours. And when you react to it with dishonesty, that's what you're putting out into the world, dishonesty. And when you put dishonesty out into the world, that's what's going to come back to you, because what goes out is what comes back. That all, as you sow, so shall you reap. I mean, it's in every great institution that there is in the world, whether it's a religion or a philosophy or whatever. What you put out is what comes back. Whatever you plant is what you're going to get back. And the more that you put out honesty, just because it's what you are, because you are being honesty, you're not trying to be honest, you're just being honesty, then that's what will come back to you on a regular basis. And when it doesn't, you'll just see that as another test for you to pass. For me, it has become a way of life. It's called serenity instead of acquisitions. The more you try to acquire, the more you try to get, the more you try to collect in your life and evaluate yourself on the basis of that, the less serenity you're going to have. More is less. It's almost a secret of the universe. Serenity means inner peace. It means that you can find joy in every moment that you have in your life instead of always looking for it. It means that while you are driving along the countryside, and seeing, instead of saying, oh, I'm on my way to this point, that you can open your eyes and see it with new eyes. See the rolling mountains, see the grass, see the deer, see the sky. You can just stop wherever you are in this second, wherever you are, and just look around you, and you can begin to appreciate just your surroundings and your environment. Then you can begin to appreciate the people that are in your life, and even the ones that are negative and you're having the most difficulty with. You can practice a new way of being with them, which is sending them love, sending them flowers, send them books, send them a tape, send them something, and just see what kind of reaction that you get. Super emotional health is just an attitude. An attitude is everything. And it's being personally an authority on yourself rather than authoritarian and trying to be dominating someone else or to be dominated. And serenity, which is the name of my little girl, my youngest daughter, Serena, rather than acquisitions and accumulations and trying to prove yourself that way. And when you get that serenity, which comes from the way that you think always, then you will replace all of the other junk that keeps you back here between 6 and 1 on that clock. And once you get past it, you'll never, ever be able to go back. Because the light, living in the light, is a way of being that if you're not there, you don't get it yet, but once you see it, and once it begins to take over your life, you can never go back. That is your purpose. Your purpose isn't to try to be loving. Your purpose is to be love, and only have that to give away. I tell people, supposing you went to sleep, and you had a dream, and in your dream you had, all these different characters, and you had all of this money, and you had everything that you wanted in your dream. And then you woke up. And then you look back at your dream, and you became attached to the stuff that you had in your dream. And you said, wait a minute, I want that. There was gold in there. There was silver. There was all of these friends. I had a Ferrari there. I mean, all of this. I got to have that. Somebody would come away and cart you off and put you in a rubber room and say, that was a dream. You can't be attached to that. That's just a thought that you have. That's the way you got to view life. Instead of it being an 8-hour dream, it's an 80-year dream or a 90-year dream. And at the end of the dream, you don't want to be looking back at all of the stuff that you wish you could still have, because you can't have it. You don't get any of that. So you try to detach yourself now, while you're here, while you're alive, from the need to have that stuff. Instead, you just let it sort of all flow. As absurd as it would be for you to be attached to the stuff that you had in your dream, it's that absurd for you to be attached to the stuff that you're having in this dream. You have to die while you're alive. Now, that's a very hard concept for people to get. But you have to experience your own death while you're alive. Let me tell you a story. It's a wonderful story. It's an old, ancient story. I'll paraphrase it. There was a hunter who lived in India. And he would go to Africa every 2 years. And he would bring back animals and prizes and things like that. Well, one year he took off and he went to the jungle, and he discovered this large enclave inside the jungle. And it was filled with beautiful parrots, beautiful birds, multicolored, and they all talked. And he couldn't get over it. And he put a net out over one of the trees, and he captured one of the parrots. And he put the parrot in a cage. And he brought the parrot back to be with him in India as his pet. And he fed the parrot sunflower seeds, and he fed him rice, and he took wonderful care of him. He was very good. Kept him in the cage. 2 years went by, and he talked to the parrot every day. And he said to the parrot, "I'm now going back to Africa. Is there anything you would like me to say to your friends back there in the jungle when I'm back there?" The parrot said, "Yes. Tell them that I'm very happy in my cage. Tell them that I am joyful and that I love being in my cage here with you. Just tell them that." The hunter went back to Africa. He went back to the place in the jungle where he had been 2 years before. And he told the story. He said, "Your friend that I took back has a message for you. And the message is that he is happy in his cage, that he is joyful with me, and that he has no regrets." At the instant of hearing that, a bird on one of the branches keeled over and dropped dead. Dropped dead. Stiff. The hunter assumed that he was just filled with sorrow at hearing of what had happened to his friend. So he went back to India, and he told his parrot what had happened. He said, "I went back and I did just as you said. And I told them all out there. And at the moment that I told it, apparently one of the parrots was so upset that he'd missed you so much that he just dropped dead. And at the instant that that happened, the parrot in the cage keeled over, dead. His legs went straight up in the air, and he went stiff." The hunter was beside himself. He couldn't figure out how could this happen. And he took the dead parrot out of the cage, opened it up, and threw it out on the woodpile. The instant that the parrot landed on the woodpile, he flew up to the branch. And the hunter said, "You tricked me. What is this? I thought you were dead." And the parrot said, "My friend was sending me a message. He told me, by his actions, that in order for you to escape from your cage, you must die while you're alive." Okay, now that's an old story. That's an ancient story that's been told over the years. What does it mean? I mean, don't you see that this is a cage? That the whole planet is a cage? If you can just stand back far enough and see that we're still restricted by the limitations placed on us as human beings. We're stuck here, or maybe in our homes, or in wherever we are. We're all in cages. And even though we have more room to manipulate, we may even have a whole planet, we're still sort of in cages. Now, how do you escape from the cage that you're in? You have to die while you're alive. You have to literally experience your own death. All of us have to. All of us are going to die. So why not experience it in advance? And see yourself out of your body, gone, but able to look back at what's going on now. Just like the dream, where you have the dream and you have everything you want, but you're able to look back at it. As you do that, you begin to see the folly, the absurdity of hanging on to anything, of being attached to anything, of needing anything, of telling yourself that I can't be happy if, from the perspective of having died, but being able to look back on it just like the dream. As soon as you can do that, as soon as you can experience yourself formless, dimensionless, form and all of the attendant things that you hang on to become irrelevant. They're not necessary any longer. You have a whole new way of living, a new way of being.
But remember the word coincidence. In mathematics, it's a term that defines angles that coincide. And in mathematics, two angles that coincide are said to be angles that fit together perfectly. And we have taken a term that means something that fits together perfectly and interpret it to mean that is something that fits together and shows up accidentally or in chaos. But actually, anything that is coincidental with something else is a fit that is perfect. And there are no accidents in this universe. When you begin to access a power, you start to have an awareness that it's absurd to believe that in a universe which has an intelligence behind it, that an accident could show up. Everything is a part of the perfection of it. Everything. There are no accidents in this universe. You came in when you were supposed to, you'll leave when you're supposed to. The children that came through you or didn't come through you are all part of that perfection. Questioning it, challenging it, all it does is keep you from accessing the ability to manifest and attract into your life what you really would like to have when you begin to question it. And when you ask, now the question always comes up when I talk about these kinds of things is, well, if there is a force, and this force is a part of the perfection and there are no accidents, at what point do I have a free will? And am I making any of these decisions? And Jung answered that question brilliantly. He said, at the same moment that you are a protagonist in your own life and you're making choices, you are also the spear carrier or the extra in a much larger drama. You are doomed to make choices. And that paradox is something you have to live with. Yes, you are making choices. Yes, you have the capacity to attract into your life virtually anything you want. And yes, there is an intelligence into which you can connect that can access virtually anything you put your attention on. And yes, it's all part of the perfection of the universe. Yes, both of those things you have to live with at the same time. You have to transcend those dichotomies. But I want to speak just for a few moments about what happens when you leave ordinary levels of awareness and you leave these lower energies. When you leave the energy of the solid, where all of your problems occur, when you leave that and move into this energy of spirit, wherein you only have love to give away, as I spoke about earlier, where your response to sadness is always a higher energy of joy, where your response to doubt is always a higher energy of faith, where your response to hatred is always the higher energy of love. When you practice what Francesco taught us in that very famous prayer attributed to St. Francis, what happens when you reach these higher spiritual energies is that you start to access something in which you can see it coming. And you get outside of yourself, as I just spoke about. And that is called intuition. And that intuition is available to you, that you can practice it virtually any time in your life, but you've got to get out of these lower and slower energies because it's not accessible there. It doesn't exist there. Problems exist there. Fear exists there. Worry exists there. Guilt exists there. Hatred exists there. Anger exists there. These are all lower and slower energies. And when you listen to the 10th principle, you'll see that they're not just lower energies, but they weaken us whenever we access them and whenever we use them. But when we get outside of them, we start to get out in front. And now I suggest to you, brazenly, that you don't have to have accidents in your life. That you don't have to be a victim of crime in your life. That you don't have to live in a world of scarcity in your life. You don't have to. If you're willing to take responsibility for whatever acts of crime have come your way without guilt, if you're willing to and just say, I own them, they're mine, I've attracted it for some reason. If you're willing to say, I have had these various accidents and I've attracted that into my life. I don't understand why, but I know that it's mine. If you're willing to say that I've attracted the wrong people into my life, people who have abused me and victimized me, and I have taught people how I'm willing to be treated, and I'm no longer willing to do that, and so I'm going to send out a different attractor energy. If you're willing just to take responsibility without guilt, I underline it. I don't want any letters, okay? I underline it. You do not deserve any of it. You have not been punished for the things that have happened in your life. You just own them. They're yours, because you can't get past them if you're waiting for something outside of you to change. You get past them by taking responsibility for them. Then what happens is you start seeing an accident coming. And many of you have had that experience. When you are in a higher frequency in your life, and you have an intuitive sense that, I know it's a green light, but I think I better stop. You know, a lot of heads nodding up and down. And something tells you, whatever it might be, something tells you, I better stop and slow down here. And zoom, there goes somebody through a red light, and you stop and you have that feeling that goes through you. Go, what was that? What was that? And you know when you can access that? When you're close to God. When you're in fear, you can't access it. Do you know your past? Do you know where it is? It's only where you think. Do you know that every relationship you have, close your eyes, just close your eyes. Just close them. Okay, where's your husband? Where's your wife? Where are your children, your grandchildren? Where's your ex-spouse? They're all in your mind. Open your eyes. Now they're gone. Close your eyes. There they are again. They're just in your mind. You carry your relationships around in your mind. And if your thoughts about your relationships are on what is wrong, what you don't like, what you hate, what they did to you, that will be your experience. And you will materialize or manifest more and more of that pain into your life. If you look at what you love about them and make that the focus of your attention, that will be the nature of your relationship. It's the greatest secret in making any relationship work. It's so simple. Always focus on what you love, if you want that to expand in your life. When you look at someone that you're in a relationship with, look at what you love. Because what you think about is what expands. I'll be talking about that a little bit later on. About not giving energy to the things you don't want. Because what you think about is what expands. And if what you're thinking about what you don't want, then more of what you don't want will just keep showing up. It's the only way it works. So now I'd suggest to everybody in this room and everybody listening that you take an eraser to all of the wounds of your past and you just send them away. And don't make them your calling card anymore. And bring the presence of God to those problems. And the presence of God is nothing more than a higher, faster energy. It's all energy. Everything is energy. As Einstein said, nothing happens until something moves. And spiritual energy is just energy that moves very fast and at very high frequencies. And problematic energy is very slow and very low frequencies. And when high, fast frequencies are put in the face of low, slow energies, they are nullified. They dissipate. They can't survive. There's a song that they sing at a lot of the churches that I speak in. It says, "Surely the presence of God is in this place." It's a great affirmation. Anytime, or the affirmation from A Course in Miracles, I can choose peace rather than this. But surely the presence of God is in this place. Every time that I have a conflict with one of my children or with any place, I just bring that line to bear on what is I am experiencing right now. I just bring that line to bear. Surely the presence. Because there's no place that God is not. As the little child in India in the 7th century, who was an avatar, who was really God in a human form,
And everywhere he would go, people would be healed just by being in his presence. Just like St. Francis. He'd be seen in the village, he'd be seen in the valley at the same time. Lights would emanate from his body wherever he would go. And everyone in the village knew that this was a child of God. This was God in their village without the benefit of an ego. This was an egoless being who had shown up in their village, which is what I believe our great spiritual teachers were. Like there's ways to reach highest levels of consciousness. One of them is to take on an ego and then spend a big hunk of your life seeing if you can shed as much of it as you can, which has been my path. But there's another one where you just show up and you never take on an ego in the first place. There's only been a handful of those in recorded history. And this little child was one of them. And the elders in the tribe knew that this was God in a human form. And they went up to the little boy and they said to him, trying to bribe him, "I'll give you an orange," they said, "if you can tell me where God is." And the little boy, without hesitating, said, "I'll give you 2 oranges if you can tell me where God isn't." It's one of the very fundamental precepts of this entire program, is that there's only one power in the universe, and that is the power of God. And that whenever we see evil, it's nothing more than love going in the wrong direction, away from its source. And all we have to do is figure out a way to get it to turn around and start returning to its source. Because there's only one power in the universe. And every time we think that we are in something that isn't good, like a problem, like disorder, disharmony, disease, discomfort, what we've done is we've used our mind to create a separation from God. And as long as we are moving away from that source, from that spirit, as long as we're moving opposite of that, those problems continue to manifest. But if we can somehow figure out a way to turn around and move back in that direction, we can eliminate it.
Non-erroneous zone people, which I now call NEZ, N-E-Z, are different from the normals in our world. While they look very much like everyone else, if you observe very closely, you'll note distinct qualities, none of which are racial, socioeconomic, or sexual, which disconnects them from so many other people. They do not fit neatly into any role definition, job descriptions, geographic patterns, educational levels, or financial statistics. There's a different quality about them, but the different part is not discernible by scanning the traditional external factors that typify many efforts at classifying people. They may be rich or poor, male or female, black or white, living anywhere, doing just about anything, and yet they are different in that they have no erroneous zones. How can you tell when you run into a NEZ person? Watch them. Listen to them. This is what you'll discover. First, and most obviously, you see a person who likes virtually everything about life. Yep, this is a liker. A person who is comfortable doing just about anything, and one who wastes no time in complaining or wishing that things were otherwise. They are enthusiastic about life, and they want all that they can get out of it. They like picnics, movies, books, sports, concerts, cities, farms, animals, mountains, and just about anything that you can include in your list. They just plain like. When you are around them, you'll note a startling absence of grumbling, moaning, or even passive sighing. If it rains, they like it. If it's hot, they dig it rather than croak about it. If they're in a traffic jam or at a party or all alone, they simply deal with what is there. No pretending to enjoy, but a sensible acceptance of what is, and an outlandish ability to delight in virtually everything. Ask them what they don't like, and they are hard-pressed to come up with an honest answer. They don't have sense enough to come in out of the rain. Why? Because they see rain as beautiful, thrilling, and something to experience. They like it. Slush doesn't send them into a fury. They observe it, splash around in it, and accept it as a part of what it means to be alive. Do they like cats? Yes. Bears? Yes. Worms? Yep. You'll be hard-pressed to come up with things, events, people, activities, or ideas that they dislike. They live, and while such annoyances as disease germs, droughts, mosquitoes, floods, and the like are not warmly embraced by Nez people, they never spend any of their present moments complaining about them or wishing that they weren't so. If situations need to be eradicated, then they will very likely work as eradicators, enjoying themselves and living all of their present moments. Try as you might, you'll have a tough time coming up with something they'll dislike doing. Truly, they are likers of life, and they wallow in all of it, getting out of it all that is possible for them. A Nez person is free from guilt and all of the attendant anxiety that goes with using up your present moments, being immobilized over past events. Certainly they can admit to making mistakes, and they can vow to avoid repeating certain behaviors that are counterproductive in any way. But they do not waste their time wishing that they hadn't done something, or being upset because they dislike something that they had done at an earlier moment in their life. Complete freedom from guilt will be the shocking behavior that you will observe in your Nez person. No lamenting the past, and no efforts to make others choose their own guilt by asking such inane questions as, "Why didn't you do it differently?" Or "Aren't you ashamed of yourself?" And so on. They seem to recognize that life lived through is just that, and no amount of feeling bad will alter the past. While they practice this non-guilt on themselves without any effort, because it is natural, they are remarkably free from even helping others to choose guilt for themselves, because they see with a third internal eye that feeling bad in the present moment only reinforces a poor self-image, and that learning from the past is a far superior tact over remonstrating about the past. You'll never see them manipulating others by telling them how bad they've been, nor will you be able to manipulate them with the same tactics. They won't get angry at you. They'll simply ignore it and see you as someone who is a guilt dispenser. Rather than being upset at you, they'll go away, or they'll change the subject. Hence, you won't even recognize that the very strategy that works so beautifully on most people has failed dismally on your Nez friend. Rather than smear themselves and others with guilt, they just unceremoniously pass when it comes along. Similarly, your Nez chap will be a non-worrier. You'll soon note that circumstances that drive many people to frenzy will be mildly internalized by a Nez person. They are not planners and putters away for the future. They refuse to worry when you do, and they keep themselves unmucked up by the accompanying anxiety that goes with worry. You can't drive him or her crazy with worry. They don't know how to do it. Almost as if it is just not a part of their makeup. Not necessarily calm at all moments, but just unwilling to spend any present moments disasterizing about things in the future over which they have no control. They are very present moment oriented, and they have an internal signal that seems to remind them that all worrying must take place now in the present moment, and that it is a foolish way to go about living one's current life. With no present moments ever available for awfulizing, they just never seem to get around to the business of worry that so occupies most lives. Your Nez person is able to live now rather than in the past or the future. They are unthreatened by the unknown, and they seek out experiences that are new, untried, and unfamiliar to them. They love ambiguous things rather than being upset by them. They love the now in virtually all settings, being aware that this is all that they have. They don't plan for a future event and let long periods of inactivity elapse as they await a payoff. The moments between events are just as livable as those taken up by the events themselves, and they have that uncanny ability to get every pleasure out of their daily lives. They are not postponers saving for a rainy day, and while their culture admonishes such behavior, they are unthreatened by reproachment. They gather in their happiness now, and when a future now arrives, they gather in that one as well. Strange, but this Nez individual is always enjoying simply because they see the folly of waiting to enjoy. This is not some special credo that they've adopted. It is the natural way of living, very much like that of any child or all animals. Grabbing heavy doses of present moment fulfillment, while most normals spend their lives waiting for their payoffs and never being able to seize them. These people are strikingly independent people. They are out of the nest, And while they have a strong love and devotion for family, they see independence as far superior to dependence in all relationships.